Welcome back to the homestead. So we're back on the Dodge project. You remember we left off. We've got it just about dismantled. So what we're going to do today is we're going to walk you through the process of getting your injector lines off and changing your injectors. We're going to do the delivery valves as well and some other stuff we got to do, so the lines won't be going back on today. But we'll get through the process of getting the old injectors out and the new injectors in. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to come around here, and there's a couple clamps right here that hold it to the manifold, so we're going to break those free. Everything else I've watched has said to leave all the other clamps on and take the lines off as an assembly. So we're going to go ahead and do the lines. Okay, now we're going to go off over here and knock them off the injectors. Now you notice I didn't take this fender off. I toyed with this quite a bit, but this air conditioning line goes right along here, and the air conditioning works well in this truck. And I have to work over that anyways, and there's not a lot to do on this side. The hardest part was just getting the manifold bolts out. I believe that should be a lot easier on the new manifold going in, because we'll be able to... I couldn't get the turbo off that manifold. Now to be fair, I didn't try very hard, but the bolts were quite rusted and stuck in there, and I could have got a torch out and I could have tried harder, but I just took the whole assembly out as one piece. Okay. There's one set of lines, and there's another set. The Banks dual ram intake that we bought actually came with all of these fancy little blue plugs or covers. So we're going to go ahead and put them on our delivery valves. Even though we're going to take these apart and change them, and we'll wash things out at that point. We're not going to put 6 on the injectors right now because the injectors are coming out. So we'll put 6 on the new injectors when we put them in. So now what we have to do is we have to take our return line off the injectors, and that is a 10 millimeter. There's one back in here. I don't think I can get a ratchet on. Now we could probably bend this out of the way enough to not be a problem and change our injectors. I don't know, but I'm going to go over there and I'm going to actually take the line off the filter just to get it right out of my line. And I'm going to put that bolt right back in the fuel filter housing. I'm really good at putting things where I won't forget where I put them. And then on here, there's all these little copper horseshoe clips, or washers actually, sealing washers. And they do give us new ones of these. So we're going to take those off. So we'll let you guys cover your ears and your eyes. And we'll show you what's going on here in a second when we get everything apart.
For any of you doing this at home that might be wondering, that is a 15/16 socket.
So this nut goes down over the injector and screws into the head and holds the injector in place. The injector itself has a little ball inside of it that goes in a groove in the head so it doesn't turn. It's kind of indexed. So as you're doing this, you want to, if you're feeling a lot of resistance after the initial break free, you want to stop because you're probably turning the injector and you could do some damage. Now in my case, the first one was really tight. This one I could start with one hand. We have an injector puller. And I guess some people have mixed success grabbing them with the pair of channel locks and pulling them out. But there's a lot of sealing surfaces on those injectors. So this came with the Power Driven Diesel kit. I don't remember which nut we need. I think it's the big one. It is. This sits down on the head like that. Washer goes down onto that. There's a up and a down on the washer. You see it's got a machined piece on it that sits down into that piece of pipe. And the nut goes on just like that. Take our socket and we just crank on the nut. And there's an injector. So now what we're looking for here, when we take these out, I'm going to get this puller off in this one, I'll show you, is a couple things. There's a copper washer right here on the bottom, you can see, and it's pretty well stuck on there. From my understanding, it almost always sticks on the injector, but if that doesn't come out with the injector, you got to get down there with a pick and pull it out. And that's that little ball I was talking about that's keyed, so it can only go one way, so that your return line lines up. And that's what I meant about, like, if you're going to grab a pair of vice grips, I mean, you could grab it here on these two flats and pull, but for our case, it came with a kit. But for a few bucks to buy this little puller kit, seems like a no-brainer to me. So we're going to pull these other 5, and we'll bring you back and show you how to put the new ones in. We've washed our hands up a little bit. We've unpackaged our new injectors. We've got the little horseshoe clip for the return line I was talking about. They also include 3 different thickness washers for the injector. A really thick one, a medium one, and a really thin one. The old injectors had the medium one on it. That's what we're going to use. We have gone ahead and put our blue caps on that we got from Banks. So then what we have to do on this is we have to actually take this little rubber thing off. And then we want just the ever so slightest dab of wheel bearing grease. And we're going to put a washer on there. And that's going to hold the washer on while we set it down in the hole. I'm going to put just a little bit of Never Seas on the bolt. Oh, not. Down inside the head, in the hole, there's a socket for that ball to go into. And it basically wants to point right towards the passenger side of the truck. And it should just fall right down in there like that. And then your nut will thread down in. It really should be like no resistance. They should just literally set right in the hole. All of the sealing is done with the copper washer. And then we should be able to Take a socket. And for now, we're going to snug them up, and then we'll get the torque wrench out and torque them. I don't know what the torque specs are. I'll try to find them and put them like right here in the video. I'll put them on the screen for you. But you can see we got one in. So we're going to prep the other 5 and get them in. And we're just going to take one at a time. Stick them in the head. All right, I know I told you I'd put the foot-pounds of torque in the video link somewhere, but I also knew I'd forget it by the time I got to editing this video. So we did look it up. It's 44 foot-pounds. We have our torque wrench set, and we're going to go ahead and torque them down. So there, all 6 injectors are torqued to 44 foot-pounds. All right, so this is where we're going to diverge and we're going to stop. If you were doing just injectors at home, of course you wouldn't have the exhaust out, you wouldn't have the radiator out, any of those other parts out. Here's where you'd put your lines back on, and you'd have to bleed your lines. And what I mean by that is you'd want to leave them all loose over here. In a perfect world, you have 2 people. One person sitting in the truck cranking the key. You don't want to crank it until you see diesel fuel spray out pretty solidly on all the lines. And then you tighten them up, and then you try firing it up. If you're doing a lot of work to it, like if you're playing with the injection pump and a bunch of work, some guys like to have a piece of plywood handy. So if it goes into a runaway, you can stick it over the intake on the turbo, install the engine. But for just injectors, you know, you wouldn't have any concerns there really.